triangle has three corners. Every triangle has three sides, no more, no less. You don't have to guess. When it's you can see it's a magic number. A man and a woman had a little baby. Yes, they did. They had three in the family. That's a magic number. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. Now the multiples of 3 come up 3 times.
Bonjour à toutes et tous. Bienvenue.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second part of the World Forum. I would like to start with this vast subject, which is reshaping our economy. So I'm not an economist. Clearly, I needed to do a bit of research. And I would like to share a quote with you from an American economist from the beginning of the 20th century, Milton Friedman, who said, "The goal of companies is to generate values for shareholders. For 50 years, this doctrine has generated a growth of material well-being, but has also distracted our social cohesion, our planet, and has led many people in poverty." Today, with specialists in economy, we would like to think about this quote. Is the economy leading us into poverty, plunging us into poverty and into planetary emergency? Let's welcome Jean-Philippe Courtois from Microsoft and Life for Good, the eco-founder of Make Sense, Léa, and the president of Massif.
Bonjour à tous les trois. Merci de nous rejoindre.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here and for being here for this World Forum. We are here to talk about the different challenges, some of them technical, how to talk about social cohesion. I have a question for each of you. What do you think about when you hear reshaping our economy? Mr. Jean-Louis Crolassalle. Today I would like to talk on behalf of Massif. Speaking of reshaping, for Massif, this social dimension is very important. So if we rewind, we can go back to the Trente Glorieuses. And during the creation of Massif, we see that there are different models. And Massif's choice was a universal choice. There is already in this the solidarity dimension. So we wanted to embark this dimension in this choice. A second choice, the choice of an insurance. And so there is a distinction between health insurance and others. But we have an insurance that is based on 4 pillars. The first is democracy. It means that, well, we do not speak about customers, but members. Each member has a voice and will elect a delegate and up to the president. We have about 100,000 members. So this leads to a governance, and this is our first principle. Next principle in the creation of Massive is to be close to grassroots level. We always want to be close to the field. Then you mentioned this with Milton Friedman's quote, this is the economy. Yes, our company is going to make profit. The question about should we make profit or not, this is not this question that is most important. This is what do we do with this? This is not the why, this is the how. So for Massive, from the very creation of Massive, we wanted to integrate a dimension of solidarity, and I'll go back to this later. Then another characteristic is the notion of taking the time. We have hundreds of thousands of shareholders, and therefore we try to experience this pressure on a longer period of time. So this gives to the group a DNA. To our group, which at the beginning started in a way a bit different compared to Milton Friedman's quote. Thank you very much for your intervention. I think we'll get back to this, and we'll talk about the long time, the longer periods of time. But I would like to ask Leah, what do you think about when we talk about reshaping our economy? Thank you. I have created an association to give the power to everyone, to the citizens, to company CEOs, employees, everywhere, so that everyone can do their part and fight against inaction when everyone is thinking, oh, this is the state that should act, the companies or others. So reshaping our economy, the first thing I'm thinking about is that there are many economists that tried to reshape the economy and that have offered alternatives for dozens of years. And I think it is time to act. So we can say, good, now is the time, and now we are aware. So on the one side, there are the actions led by the companies, and there's the idea of the compatibility with our economy and with our social progress. A typical example. Everyone knows, for example, that we need to stop cutting hedges because it is bad for the biodiversity. So there's a distinction between the theory and our actions. We need to transform our economy. We need to get to work, and I think we can manage this. I would like to mention Timothy Parek, who is reshaping our idea of growth. He says, often we think that this is a mountain, trying to encourage people to ride bikes or to take other actions. But they say, oh, we'll try to block the sunshine, we'll try other theories, other actions. But what is simpler? Should we retransform our models to go back to inclusivity and so on? Or should we try to make a bet on a technical challenge? So your idea is that we need to act. Yes, we need to act. So I would like to ask Jean-Philippe Courtois, for you, what does reshaping our economy mean? Well, I'm not an economist, but on a macroeconomic point of view, I've observed many phenomena, and there was a report from the United Nations talking about the pillars of the economy to try to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and they have mentioned several pillars. So there's the lack of diversification of certain economies. For example, there are fields connected to minerals and so on. A second pillar is that in France and elsewhere, there is a concentration of wealth in terms of population, revenues, and so on. This has been explained by many economists. And there is an issue of digital footprint. I think, on average, an American emits 18 tons of carbon per year, a Chinese 8, and in countries such as Niger, this is 100 kilo. So very quickly, we're talking about environmental impact. Then it leads us to the problem of the governance of our institutions. In different countries, there are different processes, some autocratic. And in one given country, trying to choose a roadmap on a period of a few years time, maybe complicated, and the processes that are actioned are not enough. So I have many hats, as many other people here. I'm a member of Microsoft. I also participate in the Live for Good association, and I have also led other actions. I'm very focused on the following notion. A notion I think that we should try to converge to. And this is the idea of impact measurement. For many, this seems like something impossible to achieve. And I think that there are great people working on this. But there is also a lack of ability to measure this. Concerning the companies, they, following the declarations of the COP conferences, the companies need to try and measure tons of data, harmonize them, and defining strategies on the basis of this concerning carbon, governance, and so on. There's something encouraging to my mind. I see that in the administration boards of several companies, there is the CSE, and we're moving from the CSE to an ESG roadmap. This means that very soon we will have certain obligations. And I can see this in the administrative board. There are discussions that happen that have never been led before concerning supply chain, the company's products, and so on very different questions. And then a glimmer of hope. There's another path, a fourth path, And they are the leaders of tomorrow. These are young people that have decided to show their anger and to try to define an economic model of which the success will be measured depending on its impact. And I will stop here. So we still have a lot of things to discuss. But a common point that you have, the three of you, is that you think our economy, reshaping our economy goes through reshaping our models and projects by defining projects and actions that will allow to start these transitions in the governance and to make sure that these new strategies become part of the directives of the group. So I would like to turn towards the room, towards the audience, to talk about what your pillars are. To those who have projects, who are entrepreneurs, that are leaders of an association, could you please raise your hand? Could you please raise your hand if you have a project, if you're an entrepreneur? And maybe for those who represent companies, big companies, or small and medium enterprises, or very small enterprises. I think there's about the same proportion. Then are there representatives of the institutions, of collectivities, of local representatives? There are some. And among you also, are there some people, young people maybe, that just came here as individuals, just to gain some information? You're almost the majority. And I think it is very interesting to see this. We can see the different, maybe not spheres, but different sectors. And maybe this will help to guide our discussions today. So, in your different interventions, we'll get back to this. I have a question concerning, if we take big structures, the idea of accompanying social entrepreneurs, do you think there's friction between wealth creation, company governance, and the inclusion of biodiversity and the environmental impact? Leah, over to you. Well, for 12 years, I have accompanied many entrepreneurs, and 12 years ago, we realized that on the one side, there were companies that were making profit, and including mainly their shareholders. And on the other side, there were NGOs that were trying to fix the problems, the damages. And we thought, maybe there's a third model. There's a model that allows for a company to be flexible, to develop rapidly, and that prioritizes the general well-being. At the beginning, a company, well, in society, if the primary objective of companies is to make profits, well, this may be so, but economy is about managing a household. So how can various people work together to create value and to create a service, a value, and therefore something that bears interest? In the US, for 15 years, the GDP has continued to grow, but health and other factors are declining. So we thought that the GDP could help us to measure growth, but I think today it is disconnected from well-being. I think that if we spend our energy in projects and companies, this is to try to improve the citizens' well-being. Therefore, this ideal, to me, it is that we can create a third model. We have accompanied thousands of social entrepreneurs, but we've realized there was a glass ceiling. And we see that today it is still more profitable to place money at Total rather than in some NGO. And also, we measure success based on the capacity of a person to create money, even if it is by distracting well-being and other social progresses. So it is not an economic or political challenge, but it is a cultural challenge. If we think that we needed to measure success by basing ourselves on creating money, we cannot succeed. But some people showed that there is another way. They showed that we can, for example, create a durable fashion in France, and that we can implement short supply chains to generate inclusion and well-being. So today we don't need to create new solutions, we need to implement them and to valorize them, to optimize them. For example, in France, there's an industrialization plan, but there are already entrepreneurs that had contributed to reindustrializing some sectors in France. And they have intervened to try to show that they are proposing durable alternatives. 10 years ago, social entrepreneurship was not popular. Today, we see that this is something that can be valued, that become popular, but social entrepreneurs are lacking support. And as soon as they become a bit more visible, they are attacked, in particular by economic powers. So I believe as long as the most useful jobs in society are not valued, jobs where, for example, we take care of ill people, of our agriculture, as long as there's not a connection between something that is useful to society and value, the rules of the game are not appropriate. So you're trying to think about how we can prioritizing the different activities, but financial difficulties do not concern only social entrepreneurs. Once we get to a certain level of profitability, we are often told, okay, you need to stop there. Well, those who try to give decent salaries to people do not destroy the planet. We need to make sure that at the level of society we deploy the right measures. We need to show that another model is possible, but so that this becomes the majority, we need to think about how to value also the creation of social value and natural wealth. Thank you. I would like to ask the same questions to our other speakers. Do you agree that it is difficult to combine impact and profit? Is it something that can work? Well, I agree with many of what Leah has just said. But I would like to go a bit back to rewind. I think that our economic model has allowed many people to go out of poverty for dozens of years. And there has been an immense impact in terms of creation of jobs and so on. So the environment of companies, the world of companies, this is over 80% of jobs in the world. There are the micro social entrepreneurs and the big groups, and they all create jobs. And then over 70% of the creation of global wealth. So this is part about the whole debate in reshaping the economy. This is to say that I'm convinced that companies have an essential role to try to reconcile these factors. I'm optimistic, and I think there are positive forces currently. So it is not all a blue, perfect world. But I see this in big companies. I see people that leave big groups where they see that there's no longer the respect of people and so on. There are many people that decide that they do not want anymore to work for this or this group. And then there are clients who can decide to vote with their credit card or with cash by choosing their product. If they want to continue to buy fast fashion products, they can continue to do so. They can also think how they could change their behavior. So this means that there are consumers, and well, this is not a global movement. So we are in a developed countries, but there are emerging countries where they have not consumed yet a hundredth of what we've consumed so far. There are consumer movements, and this is something important to note. Then there's another factor. The shareholders. There are several administrations, not only ex-activists, so to say, but there are stakeholders that try to start to take action, and they try to hold people responsible. So this is still a minority. And then there is another point we've mentioned earlier, the normative roadmap that we're about to create. If you're a stock-listed company, this is something to take into consideration. There are different factors such as ethics, and everybody is going to look at these data. So where do these figures come from and so on? This is something we can get back to later. I see different phenomena in many countries. With Microsoft, we tried to create entrepreneurship for a positive impact. We've created, among others, a startup tech impact to try to bring solutions concerning the zero waste strategies ethics, in a digitalized way, because this is what we do. And I see that for many companies, there's one pillar that is missing. This is the scaling up. There are entrepreneurs that are brilliant, but and companies that are brilliant, but they still are very small. Some groups went from 2 to 4 million euros with only a few employees. For example, I'm thinking about Live for Good. They are going to recycle hundreds of thousands of plastic in the coming years. So I'm not only optimistic. I think that we need to try to give encouragement to companies, to the state, and to shareholders, to stakeholders, because those that have created companies with impact, they will know how to guide themselves, and they will also make profit because they need this. Without profit, they cannot collect funds. However, the choice of the investors, of these investors, correspond to expectations that are lower than what we can see in investment funds and so on, who they expect very, very high returns. So there are funds, impact funds. We can find very different funds. There are some stakeholders that are very authentic, others that are less, but they gather a lot of money. We can speak about 150,000 billions, and this is continuing to grow.
Thank you very much for your intervention. There's much to say, indeed. Let me get back to one point in particular. Let's provide some context and say that our current system is also providing jobs and also lifting people out of poverty. So now we are not talking about changing the system radically. Degrowth, for example, may not be a concept that can be applied in an equal way in all the countries. Because we do have people in some countries that are going to say, I have to keep my job because I need my salary to make ends meet. So it's difficult to find the connection between these two concepts. Let me just jump in, because there's a lot to say about people who are ready to give in their job because of the energy transition. Some studies have proved that energy transition can create more than 2 million jobs. So it's about transforming and transferring the jobs into other industries. So it's not about forgetting about cars. So what we want to do is to make sure that we accompany the change, and we can change and transfer the jobs from this industry into another one. So I believe the change has to be done within 5 years, rather than just being victims of the change. So I'm very careful when we're talking about the impact on the job industries. We know that a lot of progress has been made, but today we are witnessing a mismatch. And we know that climate change is going to be very damaging to the job industry. So let's accompany this momentum and try to transform it into something useful for society. Otherwise, it would be a total disaster for society and also very violent impact. Jean-Philippe, you were also mentioning models in terms of governance and political choices. So let me now ask Monsieur de la Salle and the governance model. Let me chime in just for a bit. Let me confess something. I actually spent my whole Saturday cutting hedges in my garden. And actually, because it's growing so fast. Well, it was just a joke, but I just wanted to be transparent with you. Now I'm feeling better. Coming back to a few things, the creation of value inside a company. And you mentioned it today, when you want to draw skillful people into your company, you have to mention the possibility of remote working, but you also need to emphasize the kind of value that is projected by the company. Today, a company that does not have value matching the candidates will never be able to recruit people. So today, who are the people who are deciding to change jobs? Well, it's the people with diplomas who are able to change jobs quickly. But I believe it goes a little bit further than that. A concept came up to my mind when I was listening to you. It's the concept of balance. In my own industry, I'm trying to find a balance between economic data, challenges related to climate disruption, which is a major challenge, and also the creation of economic value. Because the role of an insurance company is to manage the risk for someone, because this money has been deposited by the stakeholders for our company, and we need to make sure that we manage the risk of our clients properly. So we're talking about economic risks. We're also mentioning risk related to accidents in life and also health problems. So we need to manage these various dimensions while paying attention to social justice. We are actually a major player for some of our funds because we are managing more than 200 billion euros for some of our funds, meaning that we have to be the third or fourth player in France. So what choice do we make when managing the money? The money does not belong to us. It's actually the client's money. So it's a common good that we have to manage. So we have got to identify the green funds that are worth being invested in. And you mentioned Total, and we are actually a shareholder of Total. And why are we one? Because we are part of the activists in Total. A few years ago, we represented more or less 5%. Activists represented 5% of the total voices asking for Total to do more. Within 4 years, in 2023, we are now between 15 and 17% of activists in the shareholders of Total. So it's about making sure that they can invest for green hydrogen, for example. But I do believe that we have got to play our part within society so that we can have an impact. Because in terms of energy transition, we need to embark the major stakeholders with us, and Total is one of them. Which is why it leads me to the concept of balance. Not only investing in green economy, obviously we will not put money in coal industries. Let me give you an example to be a little bit clearer. I mentioned health and the risks associated to health. What kind of society do we want? let's take the example of a person who's had an accident. When you're an insurer, you've got to make a choice. Either you send money and it's done and dusted and you don't care about what the person will become and what will happen to them, or you decide to accompany your client. And in that case, you need to tackle the issue of debt, for example. So how can you accompany your client? Well, you need to make sure that your client will be able to live in an environment favorable to their health. And you can also have long-term projects to make sure that they will receive money. This is the second choice that we want to make so that we can accompany our clients for the next 30 or 40 years. Hence, we can lift people out of poverty and provide them with the means to face the challenges. So this is the balance that we want to find, and this is our way to play a part in the society. Thank you very much for your intervention. We're actually talking about transforming and revamping our model. Massive is a model of innovative governance. But do you think it's the right term, because it's quite an old model of governance indeed? So it was told to be outdated, but today it seems to be quite an accurate solution to deal with the energy transition. Can you tell us more about it? And then I also want to get back to the topic of governance and the way that you accompany the various social entrepreneurs. The founder of the Massive is a person that I have got the pleasure to know, but I can tell you that when he founded the company, the concept was quite innovative. The governance, the core of the governance, which is our board of administrators, is that we are elected. I am part of the company. I have got my share in the company for more than 15 years now, so I'm really part of the governance. And we draw strength from that because we are strongly connected to the ground and to our clients. And I'm also part of the board of administrators. So this notion of promiscuity and proximity, rather, to our clients is very dear to us. We've got more than 1,000 delegates that work tirelessly to prove their solidarity through different approaches. They try to help people who are jobless, for example. So these delegates play an important part because they meet the people, they meet the population. So it's important that we do not have a mismatch between our strategy and what is happening in the lives of people, because we are still doing an awareness campaign on the first level. We are very much affected by climate disruption. And when I say we, I mean all of us. In 4 years, we have had to pay 4 times more for indemnity to our clients who suffered damages linked to climate disruption. So we are very much impacted by these challenges. So in the long term, in the United States, for example, the insurers will have to ask themselves, will they be in a position to insure property for the inhabitants of the country? If you take the example of California, if you want to make an insurance for a villa, it would be 7,000 euros. For the equivalent, it would be around 500 euros in France. So what does that mean? It means that we need to have these campaigns of awareness. I told you about all our delegates that are working on the ground, where we are having meetings with the population, and we try and find solutions on the ground. We want to meet the needs of the people. For example, planting microforest in urban areas. I know it's very fashionable, since our president said that each child in France should be able to plant a tree at school. But all these campaigns of awareness are also part of our work. So in a very humble way, we are trying to play our role in the society. Thank you very much. Mr. de la Salle, maybe a last word about governance, because it's definitely a very important concept for companies. So Leah, please chime in if you also want to add something. Do you think governance is something that is already taken into account at the early stages of your initiatives?
Deux personas, comme on dit, très différents entre l'entrepreneur à impact.
So we are two different people between the social entrepreneur and me representing Microsoft. But we've got a very comprehensive program where we have people working for 3 or 4 years working around the idea of leadership. And we also try to teach them to lead companies that have a proper mission that embodies their values. So we are inviting them to think about their values and the words that they are using to craft their mission. And that is very important because it's part of collective intelligence. So it helps people think about their own role, what they want to achieve, and why did they choose to be involved in a specific cause, such as inclusion or recycling. So once we've connected with the young entrepreneur and once we've understood the passion that lies behind their work, then there's magic that's created. It's become much easier to craft a strategy that will be impactful. And when we do that, then the stakeholders are already part of the strategy because it means that they've already identified in which community they want to be part of, which stakeholders they want to reach out. And it also helps them to reach out to a proper network. And it means that they also have everyone in their company that is part of the project. Because when you start the thinking from scratch, then everyone that decides to join you has already agreed to the core value. And this is what we call the participative governance. or lucrative activity that has a goal. I am now also president of a foundation of Open Classroom that has a global impact and that makes education available to everyone. I will start with them actually only next week, but I already know quite a bit about them because this company has to make profits if it wants to survive. Yet, Open Classrooms and all their representatives and the CEO, Pierre, they want to know what can I do every day to make sure that I will make profit while I'm providing online learning, and what can I do to make sure that I make education accessible for everyone. These are mere examples that I wanted to share with you, but you've got other projects like these in big companies. And I'm talking about big companies, parts of the CAC 40 in France. And you also have another way of thinking about it by the way you measure the package, the remuneration of the leadership people of these companies. So you have got different indicators from the carbon footprint to other indicators. So you use different indicators, part of the environment, society, and governance. So yes, definitely, governance is very important. So some models need to evolve with time. But many things depend on the personality and the character of a leader of a company. Let me finish up with an example. Paul Newman, the previous CEO of a big company, maybe you all know the story of this person, but he embarked on a strategy plan for 10 years. And the plan was about reinventing the brand, his brand, Unilever. So he did something completely out of the box, meaning that he stopped drafting his reports every quarter, because that's usually something that is compulsory and expected from the shareholders. So he stopped publishing these reports, and he stopped publishing these reports for quite a long time. At the same time, he drafted a roadmap that revamped the brand and the company completely. And he has also put in place a training for all the employees of Unilever, where they are talking about why are you an employee? Why are you working for Unilever? It's quite interesting indeed, because this way of addressing your employees also echoes what we can do in terms of governance, because it's also having a guardrails rather, to make sure that you're going to preserve your DNA and to make sure that you disseminate your values to all the stakeholders of your company. Léa, maybe a last word for you, and maybe I will take one or two questions from the audience. Can we have the mic, please? in France, those who tried to inscribe their strategy in the long term is quite an example. I have got two persons in mind, amongst which Isabelle Cochet, and what happened is that they had to leave their job after they published the report afterwards. So it has actually discouraged many people to follow their path. Because today, if you want to really bring these tables on the tables during a board of administrators, well, it's complying with law. So, which is the reason why I am 100% with making sure that we can value these initiatives and that we also have binding laws to make sure that these issues are discussed. Thank you very much. Let's have the first question from the audience.
Talked a lot about the microeconomic aspects of reshaping our economy. And I was just wondering, since we talked earlier about the triangle of inaction, that in my understanding, a lot of this inaction is caused by the stage we are in right now in our current economy. So the USA have suffered earlier this year from almost being insolvent. Germany is running into recession. So there's a huge indebtedness problem that we have in our economy, which makes obviously change very, very, very difficult and keeps the goal and focus to have economic growth within our society. And I was just wondering how your reflections are on how changes in this objective on a macroeconomic level will affect the objectives on a corporate level. So if growth runs out of the center of our economic goals kind of and is replaced by something that is maybe not just focused on economic incentives.
Like you mean the link between both?
Yes.
Or like how like reshaping
and
the
also
macro?
how we can get out of this trap. We talked about value creation and how we can get out of this stage in which we are kind of gridlocked right now because we don't have the economic capacity to move on while we have the theory maybe in place to implement.
Je réponds en français quand même ou... Ouais.
Tu peux répondre en français, ce sera traduit. Et je précise si besoin qu'il y a des casques de traduction disponibles.
You understand French
Up
as
to
well?
you.
Or?
I understand very well French, but I don't speak it.
Translation is done in both French and English. I do not believe that money is the problem, indeed. In my sense, we have got funds of 100 million euros, which is very little indeed. But it has helped me enter this world of funds and investment. And I've realized that there is a lot of money available. But again, what is valued now is profit, now at a macro level. And we've seen what is happening in Europe. And this is actually what's been promoted by Extinction Rebellion. Just wait until there is a war that is fought, and if a war is fought, then we are able to allocate a lot of money for the war. So after that, we had COVID, and our President Macron said we have got to fight this war against the war, and he was able to allocate proper funds because of public health, and actually everyone agreed that we make unlimited funds available to the population. Hence my question, what's the economic model of the companies? So today we look at what's been put in place to fight COVID. Everything has been implemented on at very short term, and then we are now facing the war in Ukraine, where we are now also finding the financial capacity to help Ukraine. So I do not believe in people when they say there is no money available. So we need to make sure that the public opinion understands that environment is also a matter of public health. It is not only about am I going to die in the following weeks because of a pandemic. It's actually about having in mind what is happening on a global level. Look at the damage of pollution. But now everyone understands that there are relationships between pollution and people who develop disease. So we need to make this relationship more visible, because individual involvement is possible only when you are talking about their health or their children, and then they start buying proper food for their family. So let's be a little bit more tactical. Let's use the health approach.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can take one more question. Yes, this way. The microphone is behind, at the back of the room. I think Leah spoke very well. This factor of health was a very good indicator. I would like to give a few numbers because I have checked them. $2,000 billion, so $2 trillion that have been unleashed during this crisis. So we say that to achieve the SDGs by 2030, we would need to invest about a few $trillion, $3 or $4 trillion. Then the global GDP in 2021 was $85 trillion. So we're speaking about 5% of global wealth. So yes, there is money, but it needs to be directed. With all the questions surrounding governance, the state, companies, and the governance of the world that is necessary, because we're talking about the global north and the global south. So it shows that there's room for maneuver. But trying to converge together will be difficult. But everything shows that the cost of inaction is much higher indeed. So there is a consensus that says that we need to take action. We can take another question. Thank you. My name is Sophie Faujor. I'm the director of a fund for European investors with impact. And we do share the analysis presented by the panelists here, with objectives of governance, COMEX and boards that want to create convergence between the impact governments and the board meetings. Then concerning the corporate directive, concerning the strategy surrounding corporates and corporations and sustainability, what can help us to bring all this in the heart of the strategy of companies? We need a governance, but maybe that will not be universal, that will not be universal, because in some cases the economic factors will not allow to scale up this new model of governance. But then concerning the impact dimension, I would like to hear your view on the situation in Europe, the progress made in Europe. Maybe the first thing we can say and give a partial answer concerning the companies' ability to go forward, well, the world of companies is a world in motion. And I trust more the companies than the representatives, the leaders. I agree with this, and I would like to say that there is an issue of standard. A company, however, is global. It means that there is a pressure that can become an obligation. The obligation of making reporting has affected many companies, including US and Chinese companies. So again, there is an obligation to converge. And of course, sustainability will be part of the debate. And we spend a lot of time working on this, but I think in the middle term, we would need to have a universal accountability system. So the last dimension is the European market. We have a consumer market. There are US, Chinese, Indian companies and others that do not need exclusively Europe, but they do need European consumers. So trying to oblige them to adopt certain regulations for the European market can contribute. European countries have been among the first to define standards and to try to force companies that wanted to enter the European market to comply with these regulations. So yes, the biggest polluters are countries such as China or others, but we need to try to work with them, to include them. Thank you very much. This was a very, very dense debate. And now I would like to welcome the president of the NGO from the Philippines, Luis Okinena, who will share his view and his own vision.
I guess it's good evening and good night, right? No, but thank you for the insights. And I'm from the Philippines, and I misread actually the title of this. Wait, can you help me with this? It's missing some text actually. The first slide. Okay. So I misread the title of this session. It's supposed to be reshaping the economy, and I misread it as rethinking our economy. And I think it's important for us, at least in the Philippines, if we want to reshape our economy, we have to think, who are we reshaping it for? Because unless we reshape it for the poorest amongst us, nothing will happen. We have to make sure that they are front and center in our thinking, in how we want to introduce new solutions. And in fact, we've done in the Philippines, to give you a perspective, we are a country of 110 million. 25% are considered poorest, and 70% of that 25% are farmers and fisher folks. It's a sad story because these 70% or 3.5 million fisher folks and farmers are the ones feeding us, and yet they remain to be poorest. So reshaping the economy, I'm not an economist. I call myself a CEO, a community enterprise organizer. So we think of resetting to zero. What do the poor have that we can consider, first of all, capital? Because for the longest of time in our country, for the poorest to start something, it has to start with a loan, a credit. And whether they're able to harvest or not, they have to pay that loan with interest, whether small or big. And they are left with another serious threat, which is climate. When their 1 hectare of farm gets hit, they have to make another loan to pay the previous loan and another loan to start planting again. And for a crop of 8 months, it will take them over a year to just recover. So you can see the cycle. So unless we change the whole equation for them, almost radical, they will be left behind. So to reset to zero, we, in Gawad Kalinga, tried to think of where's the intersect between capital, community, and compassion. Compassion in commerce. Capital in the sense that how can the poor participate with equity? So we found out that they can. And I will share to you some concrete examples that we are talking about, what we are talking about in the Philippines. So resetting to zero is also about, how should I say, becoming radically optimistic, because I'm 53, turning 54 this month. And we are looking at 2050. And I'll be close to 80. I'll be close to 80, and I might be repeating myself by then. Unless we are able to think beyond our lifetime, unless we are able to begin to think beyond our institutional parameters, it's not worth fighting for. We have to fight beyond our life. The fight is beyond our lifetime. That's what the young people are very important. So, reformatting our, I wouldn't dare to call it economy because I'm not an economist, reformatting the way we do business with the poorest. We call it preferential value creation. Moving capital, transitioning capital for the poor using their sweat, their skills, and their land. We needed to create a new currency for them. And this is what is happening right now. So in the South, we are organizing 143 families. If you notice, there are latitude, longitude, because the farms that we're organizing are placed and can be traced. These are farmers who plant low value products. But because of this preferential value creation that we've introduced, meaning it's not enough to be inclusive, it has to be preferential for the poor. So those are the products that we will be exporting to Singapore. The first product you saw, it's already in the market across the country with over 800 franchise kiosks. Nothing amazing about it, but what is amazing is this big corporation, the two, we were able to convince them to follow this formula. How can a company invest 70% and only agree to earn 30%? That is preferential value creation, investing in the poor. So for a 1 hectare farm, we need, say, 50,000. They invest the 70%, which is 35, in inputs and everything. And then the poor, the equity of the poor is the sweat. We put value to his sweat. In the second cycle, we already monetized his participation in the equity. You see, unless we change the parameters on how we do business with the poor, it's difficult to reshape the economic structure. They will always be left behind. But the bigger miracle that I am seeing, and that's why I'm very optimistic, is that when we did this, so this year we have planted over 100 hectares in one area. In the other area, 120 hectares of cassava. And on the other side, we planted close to 40. These are small, but next year, our partner wants us to expand to 500 hectares in one crop alone. And they are investing. The challenge with the current economic model and everything is that when you de-risk, you transfer the risk to the poor. That's basically the challenge there. The poor, they, at least in my country, I have to always put that into context, that our poor, they always take the risk. For example, in investment, they loan. When the crop gets hit by typhoon or gets hit by pests, the loan is still a loan. Credit is still a credit. The creditor will continue to extract. And the meter keeps on running. When the produce does not, when everybody produces, the market, the value drops, and the poor sells at a loss. So they always are in the losing end. That's why the challenge for us is how do we make it preferential? How do we create an economic model that is preferential for the poor? And in the Philippines, we are moving forward with that. And before coming here, I met with 4 big corporations who want, and the miracle is unfolding right in front of me because CFOs and their vice presidents are listening on how they can do preferential value creation, investing 70, earning only 30. Now, I mentioned about the intersection of capital. I mentioned about communities. In the communities that we are working with, we are building a third framework, not microfinance, not cooperative, but CBEs, community-based enterprise, forming farmers to be an enterprise on their own. And then I mentioned earlier that I am a CEO, Community Enterprise Organizers. So by next year, we want to raise 300 CEOs. These are sons and daughters of the poor farmers themselves. Because our challenge in the country is that our farmers are way too old. The average age is 60. We want to push that down to at least 55 in the next 25 years. Now, the last message that I want to share is that if we want to rethink or reshape our economy, we reset to zero, we reformat our parameters that will be preferential for the poorest, we need to re-energize social entrepreneurs. I fear that many of the social entrepreneurs, when they begin to think about scale, they lose it. They fall into the trap of profit. I like to propose that a social entrepreneur is actually what I call a social architect. We are catalysts. We disrupt, we disturb systems. We connect the dots and allow the big players to be inspired. If we begin to plan how we can be very big as the corporations, I think we will lose it. That's why when we finally were able to, for almost a year, from planting potato to processing the product, and now it's on the market, it took us a year. Finally, we're in the market. Somebody approaches me and said, "Oh, that's fantastic what you did. Can we supply you with machines?" I said, "Yeah, but if I begin to be very efficient, I will lose half of the people. I can dominate the market, but I will lose 43 employees in exchange for one machine." So those are the tough decisions. Profit is there, but what is your bottom line? So for us, it's very clear that to reshape the economy, we need to re-energize social entrepreneurs to becoming more social architects. And in the Philippines, we are working with 000, and we built our 000 house. In 2019, we have our own 000 house. It is quite active right now. Every week, we have young men and women doing weekly conversations, dialogue with both corporate and social entrepreneurs, social impact, in even local government units, starting to talk about zero, starting to build around preferential value creation, sustainability. And it is giving our communities hope. We have to also be hope builders if we are to think about a 2050 plan. And in the Philippines, we have this sign. And this is our 30 sign. If you want, kindly, so it's like poverty, exclusion, and net zero, and zero. This is our sign. And walang iwanan means, I hope I get my French right. Nous laisser personne du côté. Right? If you agree with that, you do this. You agree? In Spanish, I think, let me check my Spanish first. Nadie, sorry, go. No dejar a nadie, right? In English, it's leave no one behind. In Filipino, it's, can you read it for me? Yes. Can you do it louder? That's such a weak. Louder. Walang iwanan. So when you go to GK and you meet these farmers, when you shout walang iwanan, they usually shout back hoo-ha. Heard you loud and clear. So when I say walang iwanan, you shout back hoo-ha, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. Okay, it's like wake up. Walang iwanan. Okay, when I say hoo-ha, you say walang iwanan. Okay, maybe it's good that you stand up so you can get the air from the tummy. Anyway, this is the end. Okay. But with this, okay, with this, okay, 000 for 2050. Walang iwanan! Hua! Walang iwanan! Hua! Thank you very much, and God bless everybody.
Thank you so much, Louise, for this testimony. Merci à chacun de vous pour vos témoignages aujourd'hui. Si vous êtes des jeunes, si vous êtes des curieux, emportez tous ces messages.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope that you can take this inspiration with you, and that this will allow you to combine your activities with these objectives. Thank you.
around pretending all grown up. Hey, rich boy, well, can you tell me why you're so stuck up when you act so down? I'll tell you everything I know, every little thing I know. I'll tell you everything I know, every little thing I know. You got a lovely way with words, must be the way you see the world. It's just the way you see the world. You got to know. You got to know. We walk around pretending we're all grown up. Hey, rich boy, well, can you tell me why you're so stuck up when you act so down? I'll tell you everything I know, every little thing I know. I'll tell you everything I know, every little thing I know. You got a lovely way with words, must be the way you see the world. It's just the way you see the world. You got to know. You got to know. I went down to your house last weekend. You were like, come on girl, do you have to point out everything that's bad? Yeah, there's a broken mirror on your bed, so clean it up or else. Why do you have to be such an asshole all the time? Don't be like that, he said.
song for anyone with a broken heart. This is a song for anyone who can't get out of bed. I'll do anything to be happy. Oh, 'cause blue skies are coming, but I know that it's hard. This is the last song that I write while still in love with you. This is the last song that I write while you're even on my mind. 'Cause it's time to leave those feelings behind. Oh, 'cause blue skies are coming, but I know that it's hard. I don't think that it's the end, but I know we can keep going. I don't think that it's the end, but I know we can keep going. But blue skies are coming. Oh yeah, blue skies are coming. Oh well, blue skies are coming, but I know that it's hard. But blue skies are coming. Oh well, blue skies are coming.
takes control of your body and soul. Embrace it. makes you cry or leave you wondering why. Don't turn around, face it. But do turn cold if they promise you gold for the price of silver. If it's chemically made by people you hate, pinch your arm, see if you're still there. Everything you want is what I got to give you. You just have to let yourself come with me now. Everything you want is what I got to give you. There's no time to hesitate. Come with me now. Let's go and watch the sunrise. Let your heart run along to the rhythm of a song. Let your heart run along to the rhythm of a song. 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 Everything you want is what I got to give you. You just have to let yourself come with me now. Everything you want is what I got to give you. There's no time to hesitate. Come with me now. Let's go and watch the sunrise. Over London Bridge, over Golden Gate. Hoppas det fylls på.
Three is a magic number. Yes, it is. It's a magic number. Somewhere in the ancient mystic trinity, you get three as a magic number. The past and the present and the future, faith and hope and charity, the heart and the brain and the body give you three as a magic number. It takes three legs to make a tripod or to make a table stand. It takes three wheels to make a vehicle called a tricycle. Every triangle has three corners, every triangle has three sides, no more, no less. You don't have to guess. When it's three, you can see it's a magic number. A man and a woman had a little baby. Yes, they did. They had three in the family. That's a magic number. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. Now the multiples of 3 come up 3 times in each set of 10. In the first 10, you get 3, 6, 9, and in the teens 10, it's 12, 15, and 18. And in the 20s, you get a 21, 24, 27, and it comes out even on 30, yeah.
Now multiply backwards from